Once upon a time in a bustling city, inside the towering glass headquarters of a billion-dollar company, a man named Daniel lived a double life that no one in the building truly understood, for while the world saw him as nothing more than the quiet janitor mopping floors and emptying trash cans, in truth he was a single father whose heart and soul revolved around the little girl who waited for him each day at the small apartment they shared across town, and every action, every sacrifice, every drop of sweat he gave was for her future. Daniel had once dreamed of a different life, one where he might have been an architect or a teacher, but after the tragic loss of his wife in a sudden car accident 3 years earlier, his dreams had been placed on a shelf so that he could focus on the one responsibility that mattered most: raising his daughter Lily. Lily was 7 years old, with hair as bright as sunlight and a smile that could melt away the heaviest clouds, and every morning before work, Daniel braided her hair, packed her school lunch, and whispered to her the same words: "Daddy loves you more than anything in the world." The employees at the company barely noticed him. They walked past him as though he were invisible, a shadow in the corner of their busy lives, and Daniel never complained, never argued, never tried to prove his worth, for he believed dignity came not from titles but from actions. Yet, fate has a way of testing ordinary people in extraordinary ways, and one spring afternoon when the skies hung heavy with storm clouds, Daniel's life and the life of the company would be shaken forever by a moment no one saw coming. Lily had been waiting near the parking lot after school, as her father's shift had run late, and though Daniel always told her to stay close, she had wandered a little farther down the sidewalk, humming a tune and clutching her backpack straps tightly. At that same moment, a sleek black car pulled up slowly beside her, the tinted window rolling down just enough to reveal a stranger's face with an unsettling smile, and he called out, "Hey there, sweetheart, want a ride? Your dad told me to pick you up." Lily froze, sensing something wasn't right, her small hands gripping her backpack as though it were a shield, and just then, Daniel, who had stepped out of the building and spotted the scene, felt his heart drop into his stomach as he realized what was happening. His voice, usually so calm and reserved, roared across the lot with a thunderous urgency, "Don't get in the car." The shout startled everyone within earshot, echoing off the glass walls of the building, and dozens of employees turned their heads toward the commotion, unsure of what was unfolding before them. The car engine revved as though the stranger might speed off, but before he could, Daniel sprinted with a father's fury and slammed his hand against the car door, yanking it open and pulling his daughter away with a strength born of pure desperation. "Stay away from my child," he barked, his eyes blazing, and in that instant, the quiet janitor who had always been ignored revealed a side of himself no one had ever seen. Security rushed to the scene, the stranger was detained, and Lily clung to her father's chest, sobbing into his work uniform as the rain began to fall in heavy sheets. Watching from the upper window was none other than Richard Hale, the CEO of the company, a man known for his cold efficiency and ruthless pursuit of success, who had never once stopped to consider the janitor who cleaned his office every night. But when he came down to the lobby and saw Daniel standing there, soaked from the rain, cradling his trembling daughter, something in Richard's heart shifted. The CEO asked what had happened, and his employees murmured details. Richard realized that this man, the janitor he had passed countless times without acknowledgement, had just risked his life to protect not only his own child but potentially every child who might have been targeted next. "What you did out there was remarkable," Richard said, his voice softer than anyone had ever heard it, and the entire room grew quiet, waiting to see how this rare encounter would unfold. Daniel, still holding Lily close, simply replied, "I'm just a father. I'll do whatever it takes to keep her safe." Those words struck Richard harder than he expected, for the CEO, despite all his wealth and power, had lost touch with the simple truth of family, having sacrificed his own relationships on the altar of corporate ambition. That night, Richard couldn't shake the image of Daniel's fierce protection, and by morning, he made a decision that would shock the entire company. At the daily meeting, Richard called Daniel into the boardroom, a place where no janitor had ever stepped foot, and in front of his top executives, he recounted the events of the previous day, praising Daniel for his bravery and devotion. "This man," Richard declared, "reminds us of what truly matters. Not profits, not power, but people, our families, our children, our community. And I, for one, will not let his courage go unnoticed." The board members exchanged bewildered glances as Richard announced that Daniel would no longer be working as a janitor. Instead, the the company would sponsor his education and training, creating a new role for him in community safety and employee engagement, where his voice and values could inspire others. The news spread through the company like wildfire, and for the first time, employees looked at Daniel not as invisible but as a hero walking among them. Daniel, humbled and overwhelmed, accepted the opportunity not for himself but for Lily, knowing it meant a brighter future for her, and as the weeks passed, his story began to ripple beyond the walls of the company, appearing in local newspapers and inspiring parents across the city to stay vigilant and to cherish the bond between parent and child. Richard, too, was changed, for he began to mend his own broken family ties, taking time to reconnect with his estranged son, realizing that wealth meant nothing if it cost him the love of those dearest to him. And so, the day Daniel yelled, "Don't get in the car," became more than just a moment of fear. It became a turning point that reminded everyone who heard it that heroes are not always the ones in suits and corner offices but often the ones quietly working in the background, driven by love, sacrifice, and unshakable devotion. Daniel and Lily continued their journey together, hand in hand, no longer invisible, no longer overlooked, but shining as proof that courage can come from anywhere, and sometimes the simplest act of a father protecting his daughter can ignite a change powerful enough to touch an entire company, an entire city, and perhaps even the world.